In this video, we're going to show you to install e-brake hardware and shoe kit on your Toyota RAV4 located behind your rear brake rotors. Using a 21mm socket, go ahead and loosen and remove your lug nuts. If you have a locking key as we do, go ahead and grab that tool, set that on there. If your vehicle has the center cap, you can still remove the lug nuts with that center cap in place. Go ahead and remove that wheel and set it aside. On the back side of a brake caliper, we have two 14mm bolts. These are the slide pins. Loosen and remove those. You can use a ratchet just to pop on in there. I'm going to use a pry tool here to go ahead and slide that caliper off. We also have a tool here to hang the caliper. Now, if you can't find a place to hang the caliper, you want to go ahead and position it so that it's rested somewhere that it won't fall and pull on the flex hose. In our particular case, we're simply going to fold this around to the inside and set it on the upper control arm. Let's remove our old pads. I'm just going to use a flathead screwdriver and go between the brake rotor and the pad. And these pads are just stuck in there. They're so frozen in there, I'm going to use a small pry bar here with a hammer and tap these out. On the back side of our brake caliper bracket, we have two 17mm bolts, one on top, one on the bottom. Now I'm going to use my breaker bar to go ahead and get some leverage on this. And once I break them free, I'll go ahead and pop a ratchet onto them, but breaker bar is nice to get leverage to make this easier to loosen. Now we want to go ahead and remove our brake rotor. I'm going to use a mallet here. Go ahead and slowly wiggle that off. Before we disassemble any of the e-brake components, I'm going to go ahead and use some spray solvent, and I'm going to wash off all of the brake dust in here. Make sure you're doing this in a well-ventilated area. Now right here we have our e-brake shoes, and on the top we have a spring on the upper right and a spring on the upper left. Now I have a tool here with a notch in it, and what this is going to do is you can get underneath the spring and you can push it. Make sure you're wearing safety glasses. You want to push it and release that spring. You release that, and there's a little hook in it, and that goes into the e-brake shoe. We're going to do the same on this side here. Unhook it. Now along the side of the e-brake shoe, let's go ahead and rotate this here on this notch. I'm going to line this up. Now there's a little spring clip with a pin in it, and the pin goes through the backing plate on the other side. Now what we want to do is, this here is spring loaded. You can push in on it, but this pin, we need to actually rotate it, push it and rotate, and that should release that. And pull that out. You can see there's a slit in it there. And here's our pin right here. On the top portion of our e-brake shoes, there is a horizontal bracket that goes between the forward shoe and the rearward shoe. You're going to pull these apart and slide this out, and here it is. It has an arch in it, so that's going to be facing the top when you reinstall this. And it has two notches. There's a large notch with a hole facing the back and a small notch towards the front, so that is how it's going to get replaced. We'll set that aside. Now if you follow this down, now that we remove that, that exposes our adjuster wheel and our third and last spring across the bottom here. So what I'm going to do is simply pull this apart like this. I'm going to work this around, and I'm just going to pull this apart. You can actually pull apart the adjuster. You can undo the spring if you want. It's going to come apart anyways. But if you undo this and pull the adjuster out, make sure you remember how it went back together. Set it down just the way it came out. You have the lower spring. Make sure that the spring part is closer towards the front. Plays a key role when reinstalling. So set that down. Now we have this here. Slide this off. This is the cable mechanism for your e-brake activation. With everything removed, we are going to clean everything again. On the rearward pin here, if you tip that down and then push it up and out through the back, you can actually finally remove that. Now we're completely stripped and cleaned. Let's start our reassembly. Now in a comparison here, normally your e-brake shoes would be totally wiped out. They could be broken, they could be scored, or just completely gone with a pad material is wiped out and you're down to metal. Here's your new replacement. You definitely want to go ahead and match everything up. Make sure everything is pretty close and accurate. At that point there, we're just going to match up the other side as well, and we'll start our reassembly. Now we have our new adjuster wheel right here, and we have our original. Now this one here just has a slide pin on this side here, and this side is threaded. So make sure you position your new one in the correct way. Now I'm going to take this pin out. I'm just going to set it aside for now. I'm going to unthread this, and I'm going to put some anti-seize compound on those threads, because this is not something that we want to freeze up. Here we go. You don't want giant globs of it. You want enough to coat the threads. You got to run that down all the way, and if you have excess, just wipe that off. I'm going to put a tiny bit here and assemble that, and that's ready for installation, so we'll set that aside for now. Now on this cable in here for the e-brake, I want to make sure that this pivot point here is clean of debris. There isn't much in here after we sprayed it down with our solvent, but this does require movement or mobility inside of the e-brake shoe, so we're going to wipe this up. And we're going to put a little dab of grease on here. There's 6 other points of contact that our brake shoes are going to be coming in contact with on the backing plate. And there's one here at roughly, say, 1 o'clock. We have 3 o'clock. We have about 5 o'clock, or actually close to the 6 o'clock area, just to the left of it where the other shoe is going to come in contact, 9 o'clock, and then back up here around 11 o'clock. I'm going to take a little bit of grease and I'm going to put a thin coat, not globs, thin coat of those contact points. That's it. You want to clean this bracket. Use your wire wheel machine or hand brush, whatever you got going on there. Little bristle brush. Doesn't have to be beautiful. You want to make sure that it is clean and free of any rusty debris. And we're going to take our pin, drop that into the back of the backing plate. Pop that through. Install the e-brake mechanism there and slide this up. And I want to get that pin to come through. Gotta position this so we can get our tool in there. Now this can sometimes take a bit to get lined up. It's not a super easy process, but you need to line that up and push this in and then twist that pin to get that to lock on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a pair of large locking pliers. I'm going to pinch and hold the shoe to the backing plate. Here we go. Twist that pin so it locks onto that. We'll go ahead and release this. So we're going to line up our e-brake shoe here. Put our pin in through the back. So now we have it, we're able to spin the tab itself onto it. So we're just going to grab that pin, slide this around because you want the spring tab to face down. We're going to install our upper bracket, wide section towards the back. Okay, so the bracket is in place. We're going to install our lower adjuster, make sure that the slider section goes towards the front. I'm going to push those shoes apart a little bit. Now you're not going to be able to lock this into place yet, because this spring is going to incorporate pulling it all together and holding that tension on that adjuster. So this long section is going to go in the lower hole. We're going to use our spring tool here to catch this side and push that over into the other. Pop that into place. At this point, you can grab the adjuster. You might have to just kind of pop that around with your screwdriver there and push that together at the base. That's all held together now. So I'm going to grab that adjuster wheel and spin that out. So I'm rotating that wheel downward and just putting some tension on those shoes at the base. Now up on top, we have our two springs. This little hook here is going to go in the small hole right where this divot is. There's a small hole there. Pop that in. You can use our spring tool just to push this over and catch it on top of the upper tab. That upper spring is installed. I'm going to go ahead and install this one here. So install the tail end over there. Use our spring tool to push this up and over. There you have it. Upper springs installed, horizontal spring and adjuster installed, 2 pins and the retainer spring clips installed. Now when you go to install the rotor, you want to make sure that the e-brake shoes just barely make contact with the inside of the rotor itself. If it's too tight and you can't get this on, you're gonna have to come underneath and spin the adjuster wheel in the up and around direction to loosen it, and to expand the e-brake shoes, you're gonna rotate it towards you. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and give this a test fit, slide this over, and what you should feel is just the tiniest amount of space here to get that on. Push that on and go ahead and spin that. You shouldn't have any resistance on there, and just move that rotor, and it's actually perfect for us. So I'm going to remove this, and we're going to apply some anti-seize compound to our hub face. If you're using the spray style anti-seize compound, make sure you protect the e-brake shoes. And by doing this, it'll help prevent that rotor from sticking to the hub face in the event that the rotor needs to come off at another time. Press this on. Inspect the backing plate around the perimeter. Make sure that it's not rubbing or going to rub and come in contact. I'm going to take a lug nut and spin this on. The reason for this here, it'll keep that rotor from kicking out when we go to do our caliper bracket and caliper. Go ahead and take your brake caliper bracket, slide that back into place, and we're going to get one of our bolts started on the top here. And we'll do the same for the bottom. Once we have these started, let's go ahead and snug those down. I have that upper one snug. Let's go ahead and repeat for the bottom. Now on the inboard pad, you should have a squeak tab, and how these actually go on, they go on right in the notch here. And they literally just press down so that the little tab is facing where the pad is, and then the round loop is on the back side. The purpose of this here is once the brake pad gets down far enough, that little tab will actually make contact with the brake rotor and make a squealing or chirping sound. That lets you know that it's time to go ahead and replace the brake pads before the rotors are ruined. Now that we have that installed, I'm going to take these and line them up and slide them into these sliders here. Now I only put a squeak tab on the inboard pad. If you want, you can put one on the outside as well. Push those in, make sure that they're both pushed in all the way and flush with the brake rotor. And we have a brake caliper here, and we have some remnants from our old pads here. And make sure that you have that all cleaned up. And then ours actually left some pieces of the old pads here. Want to make sure that's all cleaned out. I'm going to use my wire brush, and I'm going to clean where the pads go. Our next step is we want to go ahead and compress the piston back up into the caliper cup itself. So I'm going to do this, and what this does is it will push that piston back up inside. I'm going to do this slowly. And what your goal is you want to make sure that that piston is almost flush with that cup as far in as it will go. At this point here, we can swing this around, push this over your brake pads, push in your slide pins, and set that in place. Go ahead and take your caliper bolts, line those up with the slide pins and get those started. Now I like to thread these in as far as I can by hand. Let's go ahead and tighten those down. On the caliper bracket bolts to the knuckle, 65 foot-pounds. Go ahead and torque those. The caliper to bracket, these two bolts, are 20 foot-pounds. Remove the lug nut. Grab your wheel. Get that in place. We'll go ahead and start getting our lug nuts installed. When we get all of these started, then we'll come on back and snug them down. Good, and torque down your lug nuts to 76 foot-pounds. If you have a center cap, you can go ahead and pop that on now. At that point there, you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.